One last thing. One last thing. And maybe I did this on purpose. So, we were talking earlier tonight about the hockey news and their projections against my projections. And just move that. I'll just move that down a little bit. All right. So, this past season, Brad Marchand scored 85 points. The Hockey News has him scoring 75, and I think he scores 60. And I think he scores 60 because that's closer to his career average, and I think he had a career year, and it happens. But Brad Marchand is the biggest issue facing me as a Bruins fan. I love being a Bruins fan. I love cheering for the Bruins. I love Bergeron, I love Chara, I love Rask. I talk a lot about how Rask needs to be better if they're going to make the playoffs this year, and I've predicted they'll miss. But I honestly love 99% of the players in the team. Frankie Vatrano, absolutely. I still miss Johnny Boychuk on the blue line, but Charlie McAvoy and Brandon Carlo certainly will help. And anytime there's talk of the Bruins parting ways with either of those guys for help up front, I think they're insane. Ryan Spooner, I like Spooner. So, Brad Marchand is the issue. And as a fan of the Bruins, it's been an issue for me for years. And since this channel's gained so many subscribers over the last few months, it may not be as well known to newer subscribers. So, it's important to me that I kind of make this clear. I don't condone anything that Brad Marchand does on the ice. Off the ice, he may be a great guy. Could be a great guy. Could sit down and have a beer with him. You might have... He'd definitely have great stories to tell you. And I don't necessarily have anything against players that are rats. It may seem that way, but it's not that. It's not that if a guy's a rat, I'm going to immediately dislike him. Because there's certainly been ratish players that I've enjoyed watching. Jarkko Ruutu comes to mind as one. That there were times that Jarkko Ruutu genuinely made me laugh watching a game. But Marchand is an exercise in frustration. Because he does things I can't defend. And I tried last summer, coming out of the World Cup of Hockey. I was very, very pro Marchand and said he hasn't really crossed that line in a long time, and everybody should be willing to give him another chance. And then he starts slew footing. It's not a true slew foot, and that's the funny thing too, is that the two instances from this past season which I thought were slew foot don't match the actual term in the rule book. Marchand knows that rule. He knows it well. And in the moment, I believe he is capable of making that decision of, okay, am I going to try to take this guy's leg out, or am I just going to go by him? I understand being competitive. And I understand it is part of what got him to the NHL and has kept him in the NHL, is that competitive spirit. And again, in the trenches in a Game 7, Marchand could be one of your absolute top assets. But I can't get past the dirty plays. I want to cheer for Marchand. I know the Vancouver Canucks game that I watched where they were playing the Bruins and I had all my Bruins gear on. Boston would score, I'd celebrate, and then I'd say it was Marchand that scored, and I'd stop. I would stop. And I stopped for two reasons. One, I was in a Vancouver crowd, and they don't like the Bruins. And two, why Marchand? Anybody, but why couldn't it have been Bergeron that got the hat trick? And the hat trick is part of what frustrates me. The 85 points this past season are part of what frustrates me. He genuinely could have been in the running for the Hart Trophy had it not been for Connor McDavid running away with the scoring title. He genuinely was in that conversation with about a month left, and it was an uncomfortable conversation. But it was hard to dispute that Brad Marchand was the main reason that the Bruins were in a playoff position. that the Bruins have been able to stay near a playoff position before the coaching change. That he was their best player on any given night. And yet, it's those plays, it's those borderline plays where he's risking a 5-10 game suspension just on the off chance that maybe he'll take a guy's leg out. And it's not something that I can defend. Something that I did this past season as well for new subscribers is that if I saw something in game, so if I'm watching a game here, something happens, and I go, this is going to get talked about, this is going to go to the NHL office, I pause the game, I take this setup, I put it on this bed, I point the camera at the television, and I watch what happened in slow motion, and I go over it and whether or not I think it's worthy of a suspension on the spot. And those videos usually are very unpopular. I'm being serious. They'll get a lot of hits, but a lot of it is from people who will defend the hit or the slash or just come in to tell me that I'm a wuss. I'm not using the term they use, but you know what I'm talking about. Where they'll basically say, "Oh, you just want to know hitting league, and you're soft on everything, and social justice warrior and PC principle and all this crap." When all I'm saying is, I don't want to see these dirty plays in hockey. This is stupid. They're all in the same union. You would think that they at least have some kind of and they say they have a code. Players say they have a code and they can police themselves. But if I have seen evidence of that code in the last 5 years, it's fleeting at best. And no one exemplifies that better than Marchand. It's not just that you try to take a guy's leg out. It's not just that you have an opportunity to pass a guy by and you decide to take that dirty hit at a guy. It's that you're almost proud of it, and that there seems to be this apparatus in place that allows this to take place. And I don't know. So being a Marchand fan is hard. And I haven't been able to accomplish it. I'm still a Bruins fan. And this comes back to something else people talk about too. Well, how can you say you really like a team and yet you hate one player? It's easy. It's just like saying I really like my job but I hate one of my coworkers. It's easy. People do it all the time. I really like my house, but man, that one room, I hate it. Just that whole setup. Ugh. Well, if the Bruins were a house, Marchand's that room that I just can't, I can't abide it, and I just stay out of it. And it wouldn't be as maddening if he was a Zach Ronaldo type and he just plays that one-dimensional game. It's that he is a star. He is capable of 40 goals in a season. He is capable of 90 points. He is capable of being a Hart Trophy winner. But he just can't keep it within the rules often enough for my liking. For me to be able to really say, yeah, I'm really backing this guy 100%. So maybe I skipped Marchand in the earlier video on purpose. Because this year, I think he goes back down to 60 points. I think he still scores 30 goals. I think that's 30 and 30. And I think he again this year probably at least commits 3 or 4 hits that will have us all talking. The Hockey News thinks he's going to get 75 points. The maddening thing for me is, while I predict 60, that 85 showed us what Marchand can be. And he could be so much more. So much more. So here's the challenge. A, you've got favorite teams. Tell me which guy on your favorite team you really can't cheer for. Or, which player in this league do you think, if he cleaned up his game, could be a better player? And it could be either he takes stupid penalties, or he's cheap, or he's got that one thing in his game that's just maddening, and if he fixed that, he could be a superstar. Think like in Toronto with Jake Gardner's previously maligned defense. The idea that if he'd fixed his defense, he would have been a star player. Let me know who your picks are. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I'm going to crash for tonight. This weekend, a 3-day weekend, it's a road trip. and I'm going to take you guys on that road trip with me. Somehow, some way, we're going to make this happen. Hockey Guy road trip. It's going to be fun. Well, we're taking 3 kids, so it'll... Parts of it will... You'll get to see videos this weekend. And that will be fun. And there's ways for me to cope. We'll figure it out. Anyways, all kidding aside, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.